Hi, it's great to see you this Thursday, December 6th. I'm Carl Azus for CNN 10, always happy to welcome our viewers from around the world. Let's jump right into the news. Medical teams in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a nation in Central Africa, are trying to get a handle on the worst outbreak of Ebola the country's ever seen. To be clear, this isn't the worst outbreak the world has ever seen. That started in West Africa in 2014 and killed more than 11,300 people. In the new outbreak so far, the World Health Organization says more than 200 people are confirmed to have died. There have been around 440 cases in total, and it continues to spread. There's no cure for the Ebola virus, though an experimental vaccine and some experimental treatments have shown some promise in fighting it. Scientists don't know exactly where Ebola comes from. It causes fever, weakness, vomiting, and unexplained bleeding. And among the challenges of treating people in the Democratic Republic of Congo is that it's one of the poorest countries in the world. It struggles with corruption, it's politically unstable, and it's dealt with on and off conflict for years. According to the Voice of America radio service, one unique part of this outbreak there is that most of the Ebola patients, more than 60%, are females. Doctors aren't sure why. They have been able to help slow or possibly stop its spread in some of the Congolese towns where this outbreak was first reported this summer. The DRC has seen 10 outbreaks of Ebola since it was first identified in 1976. Next this Thursday, the United States says goodbye to its 41st leader. Yesterday, outside the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., members of all 5 branches of the military stood in honor of the late President George H.W. Bush. Afterward, 3,000 people, including political leaders and the family of President George H.W. Bush, gathered inside. President Donald Trump, former Presidents Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and Jimmy Carter were there, as well as Britain's Prince of Wales, Germany's Chancellor, Jordan's King, Poland's President, and a former Prime Minister of Canada. They heard hymns and reflections on President George H.W. Bush's life. His eulogists remembered his service as a World War II pilot, a statesman who led his country, a friend to many, a father to 6, and a grandfather to 17. George W. Bush, the son who became the nation's 43rd leader, revered his father with love and humor.
Last Friday, when I was told he had minutes to live, I called him. The guy answered the phone, said I think he can hear you, but he hadn't said anything for most of the day. I said, Dad, I love you and you've been a wonderful father. And the last words he would ever say on earth were, I love you too. To us, he was close to perfect, but not totally perfect. His short game was lousy. He wasn't exactly Fred Astaire on the dance floor. The man couldn't stomach vegetables, especially broccoli. And by the way, he passed these genetic defects along to us.
George H.W. Bush served as president from 1989 through 1993. He oversaw the end of the Cold War and led an international coalition in the Gulf War. He became friends with President Bill Clinton, who prevented President Bush from serving a second term. America's 41st leader will be buried in College Station, Texas.
10-second trivia. Which of these elements, whose atomic number is 6, is one of the most abundant elements in the known universe? Carbon, helium, hydrogen, or oxygen? It's carbon, and it's used to make everything from fuel to pencils to jewelry to ink.
Carbon is also used in treating wastewater. This is the used water that comes from baths, dishwashers, toilets, car washes, hair salons. It has soap, oils, chemicals, biological waste, and food scraps in it. And by law, it has to be treated, thoroughly cleaned before it can be released back into the environment, in part because it can find its way into oceans and lakes. Even after treatment, wastewater does not usually return to the water supply we drink and bathe in. But thanks in part to carbon and a complicated, costly cleaning process, a city in Texas is bringing wastewater back to the faucet.
So this is a recycle water facility, right?
Yes.
Reclaimed water.
Yes.
You take raw wastewater and you turn it into something that can be used to drink.
Yes, we take raw wastewater, make it into drinking water quality.
Gilbert Trejo is with El Paso Water, the city's water utility.
We do replenish our aquifer with it. So, from our calculations, after 5 years, this water makes its way into one of our wells. We pump it out and then we drink it.
First thing you really notice, obviously, is the smell. The sulfur smell, that rotten egg smell. That's human products, that is raw food. But the first step to all this is actually taking the big stuff out of the raw wastewater. Rags, wipes, leaves, whatever.
It goes through multiple levels of filtering and disinfection to get rid of pathogens and viruses, using everything from bacteria to sand.
So the water definitely looks cleaner as we've gone along here. You've taken out the big stuff, you've put it through these filters, fed it the bacteria, and let it settle down.
You can see it's a much cleaner, clearer water now. For 30 years now, we've been going from this step straight into what is a water treatment plant. Again, very unique to be at one facility to go from wastewater into a water treatment plant.
If conditions continue, drought continues, climate change progresses the way people have predicted, what is going to need to be done in places like El Paso, but I think in many other cities around the world?
We're not going to wait for a drastic climate situation to drive our decision making. We're in the desert. We already don't get a lot of water, but there's water all around us. We produce upwards of 50 to 60 million gallons of wastewater in a day, and it's good enough to drink. That is a water resource. We've just now tapped into it.
Now, even more disinfecting and purifying, including the ultimate workhorse of water treatment, carbon.
Granular activated carbon is exactly just that. Small pieces of carbon, granules, and each one has significant amounts of surface area that allow for particles and organic matter to absorb onto each one of these granules.
And this is something that even people don't realize they're familiar with, because this is what's also used in their own water filters, right?
That's right.
Activated carbon.
That's right.
A Brita filter, for example.
Yes.
From here, it is injected back into the aquifer. But El Paso is also building a new facility to process and send it directly back into their taps. A first for a major American metropolis. It's not cheap. It costs the city about 10 times more than just pumping water out of the ground. But it will provide up to 10 million gallons of water, an investment against drought. And how does it taste?
Moment of truth?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do this.
Cheers.
It tastes like water. I feel like I'm looking at something really important here. Is this the future of water?
I think it is. I think the future's here.
How could a story involving police, Fritos, and goats not get a perfect 10 out of 10? Here's what happened. Police were called after a couple of wayward goats were spotted recently walking near Interstate 265 in Kentucky. The officers tried to get the goats into a police car to move them somewhere safer, but it wasn't until they broke out a bag of Fritos, barbecue-flavored ones, that the goats willingly followed the snack into the police cruiser. When they called the owner, they were like, "Hey, we got your goat." If the animals wouldn't give their names, they'd have to be booked as Billy. You'd think with all the cars passing, they would have hoofed it on their own, but then they wouldn't have gotten Fritos for Frito. Guess the solution was in the bag. It certainly wasn't a bad idea. I'm Carl Zeus for CNN.